Off the misty Venetian lagoon lies Poveglia, Italy's haunted island where history bleeds into the supernatural. An island barely a speck on the map whispers tales of unimaginable suffering and despair. For centuries, whispers of Poveglia's gruesome past have circulated among sailors and Venetians alike. They speak of tormented spirits, restless souls forever trapped on the island that became their final resting place. Poveglia's isolation, once a sanctuary, transformed into a curse, turning the island into a dumping ground for the unwanted, the diseased, and the forgotten. What began as a refuge from invaders soon morphed into a quarantine zone during the devastating grip of the Black Death. Thousands of plague victims whose bodies were ravaged by disease were shipped to Poveglia, where their desperate pleas for mercy were lost to the wind. The island became a living nightmare, a macabre spectacle of human suffering on an industrial scale. But the horrors of Poveglia did not end with the Black Death. The island's sinister legacy continued to attract darkness like moths drawn to a flickering flame. And as we delve deeper into Poveglia's blighted history, we uncover a chilling narrative of madness, torture, and the insatiable hunger of death. Prepare yourself, for the journey ahead will take us into the darkest recesses of human history and the chilling reality of Poveglia, the island where even the earth screams. Centuries before its gruesome reputation, Poveglia was a place of refuge. In the 5th century AD, barbarian hordes swept across Europe. Terrified populations sought safety in the lagoon's secluded islands, including Poveglia. This serene island became a sanctuary for those escaping chaos. But in the mid-14th century, the Black Death swept across Europe. The Venetian Republic turned Poveglia into a quarantine zone. Ships carried the sick and dying to the island. The air grew thick with the stench of death. Poveglia became a cursed land, a festering wound in the lagoon. The Black Death ravaged Europe for centuries. Each outbreak brought a fresh wave of terror and death. Poveglia, a mere 18 acres of land, became a dumping ground for the infected. Ship after ship arrived, overflowing with the sick, the dying, and the already dead. The conditions on Poveglia were nothing short of horrific. The sick were left to die in agony, their bodies piled high. The Venetian authorities resorted to mass burials in enormous pits. Massive bonfires consumed the dead, casting an eerie glow across the Venetian lagoon.
The pyres burned day and night, casting long, dancing shadows against the crumbling buildings that were once intended as shelters. But these structures, hastily erected and ill-equipped, offered little solace from the horrors that unfolded within their walls. The sick, abandoned and left to their fate, succumbed to the plague in droves, their cries for help lost in the wind that carried the ashes of their brethren across the lagoon. The pyres, meant to be a grim necessity, became symbols of utter despair. Families, watching from afar as their loved ones were consumed by the flames, were left with the haunting image of their final moments. The island, once a symbol of refuge, became synonymous with death, its very name striking fear into the hearts of the Venetians. Even those tasked with transporting the sick and tending to the pyres did so with dread, knowing that they too could easily succumb to the invisible enemy that stalked the island. As the Black Death slowly retreated, leaving a trail of devastation in its wake, Poveglia remained. The island, scarred by the plague and haunted by the memories of those who had perished there, stood as a chilling reminder of the fragility of life and the indiscriminate nature of death. The soil, 50% human ash, held the silent screams of thousands, their souls forever intertwined with the tragic fate of Poveglia. The plague-ridden years left an indelible mark on Poveglia. The island, once a symbol of hope, had become a place of unspeakable horror. Even after the Black Death, the island remained largely uninhabited. The buildings, once intended to house the sick, stood empty and decaying. A new chapter of horror was about to be written.
In the 20th century, the transformation of Poveglia from a plague island to a mental asylum did little to cleanse its tainted soil. The island embraced this new wave of suffering, its stones vibrating with anguish. The hospital loomed over the island like a malevolent entity. Patients arrived with fear etched into their faces. Some were truly afflicted by mental illness. Life inside the asylum was a living nightmare. The cries of the tormented echoed through the corridors. The air felt heavy with despair and decay. Asylum patients reported seeing strange shadows and hearing the wails of suffering spirits, making it difficult for them to sleep at night. Within the asylum's cold, sterile walls, medical practices took a sinister turn. Driven by a warped sense of curiosity, a doctor began to view the patients as subjects for experimentation. Legend has it that procedures, often brutal and unnecessary, were carried out under the guise of treatment. The patients, powerless to resist, became victims of unimaginable cruelty. One particularly disturbing rumor spoke of lobotomies performed with crude instruments. According to local legend, the doctor used the patient's reports of ghost sightings as justification for performing horrendous lobotomies on them. Other tales spoke of experimental drugs and therapies, their effects often devastating. The asylum, intended as a place of healing, had become a chamber of horrors. The very people entrusted with their care had become their tormentors. Word of the horrors taking place on Poveglia slowly began to seep out. The island gained a new layer of infamy, becoming a place to be feared. Even the fishermen refused to cast their nets near the island's shores, fearing they would catch human bones. There were over 160,000 plague victims and mental patients buried on the small island of Poveglia. Therefore, it is not surprising to see human bones wash up on its shores. As the years turned into decades, the asylum on Poveglia became a breeding ground for its own unique brand of madness. One doctor in particular, a man whose name has been lost to history but whose legend continues to haunt the island, became consumed by his own twisted experiments. Driven by a desire to unlock the secrets of the human mind, he crossed every ethical boundary, transforming from a healer into a monster. The patients became his playthings, subjected to increasingly horrific procedures in his relentless pursuit of knowledge. He documented his findings meticulously, his journals filled with chilling accounts of his experiments and the patients' tortured responses. But his pursuit of knowledge came at a terrible cost, his own sanity crumbling with each passing day. The doctor's descent into madness culminated in a final act of horror. Driven to the brink by his own demons and consumed by guilt for the suffering he had inflicted, he took his own life, leaping from the asylum's bell tower. His body, broken and battered, was found on the rocks below, a macabre testament to the darkness that had consumed him. The doctor's death did little to lift the oppressive atmosphere that hung over Poveglia. It solidified the island's reputation as a place of true evil. The asylum became a monument to the horrors within its walls. The Italian government eventually closed the asylum. Years later, a family purchased Poveglia Island to build a private holiday home. However, on their first night on the island, they experienced horrifying paranormal activity and fled within hours. Reportedly, their daughter's face was almost ripped off by a furious entity, resulting in the family leaving the island. Stories of Poveglia spread, whispered across the Venetian lagoon. The island attracted thrill-seekers and paranormal investigators. Few dared to stay long, for the island's dark history seemed to seep into the air. Given Poveglia Island's dark past, it's understandable to believe that the restless spirits of both the mental hospital's tormented patients and the countless victims of the plague still haunt the island. Visitors who ventured into the hospital in its final years of operation reported chilling encounters with the paranormal throughout the island. Those who trespassed after its closure described terrifying experiences inside the deteriorating buildings, including seeing moving shadows on the walls following them. Poveglia was abandoned, left to the elements and spirits. The buildings now stood empty and decaying, but Poveglia's story did not end there. The island's dark legacy continued, fueled by whispers of hauntings. The soil seemed to hold on to the memories of the past. Poveglia remained a place of fear, a chilling reminder of the darkness within the human heart. The closure of the asylum did little to quiet Poveglia's troubled history. The silence amplified the island's eerie aura. Ghosts of the past seemed to seep into every corner, felt in the rustling leaves and chilling wind. Locals whispered tales of strange occurrences. Fishermen claimed to hear screams echoing across the water. Others saw flickering lights in the windows of abandoned buildings. Poveglia had become a prison for tormented souls. As the years passed, stories of the asylum's horrors continued to surface, passed down through generations of Venetians. Some were dismissed as folklore, the product of overactive imaginations and the island's sinister reputation. But others, too detailed and disturbing to be easily dismissed, hinted at a darkness that ran deeper than anyone had imagined. One particularly disturbing rumor involved the asylum's bell tower. Locals claimed that the doctor, driven mad by his own experiments, had not taken his own life, but had instead been pushed from the tower by the spirits of his victims, their vengeance echoing in the tolling of the bell. Whether true or simply the product of local folklore, these stories added another layer of horror to Poveglia's already grim history. The island, once a place of physical confinement, had become a repository for fear itself, a place where the line between reality and nightmare blurred with every passing year. The bell tower, once a symbol of hope, now stood as a sinister sentinel, its shadows stretching across the island like a curse. Visitors to Poveglia couldn't help but feel a sense of unease as they passed beneath its shadow. Some claimed to hear the phantom ringing of the bell, a mournful toll carried on the wind. Others spoke of seeing a shadowy figure in the tower window, disappearing when approached. Poveglia, shrouded in mist and draped in the weight of its horrific past, became a magnet for paranormal investigators and thrill-seekers alike. Drawn to the island's grim reputation, they came seeking evidence of the supernatural, eager to document the ghostly whispers and shadowy figures that seemed to haunt the island's abandoned buildings. The sad and eerie spirit of a young child known as Little Maria has been seen on the island for over 4 centuries. She is possibly a plague victim. She wanders the beach, crying in a heart-wrenching manner. In the psychiatric hospital, a man named Pietro, who had lost both his legs, races his phantom wheelchair through the corridors. Witnesses claim to have heard the sound of his wheelchair speeding down the abandoned hospital halls. One intruder felt overwhelmed by fear and heard a voice instructing him to depart and never come back. The intruder promptly left. Some people have reported seeing large eyes below the water's surface. Witnesses saw faces peering from the hospital windows. A young female ghost is often seen, fearing a twisted doctor who still conducts his horrific experiments. There have been accounts of a man named Federico who continually grins and laughs. The Weeping Walls. Local fishermen, their livelihoods dependent on the waters surrounding Poveglia, had their own tales to tell. Some claimed to have seen apparitions rising from the water, ghostly figures reaching out from the depths. Others whispered of their nets, snagging on unseen objects only to pull up human bones. One fisherman recounted a story passed down from his grandfather, a tale that sent chills down the spines of even the most hardened sailors. He spoke of a night, thick with fog, when his grandfather's boat had become stranded near Poveglia. Suddenly the air filled with the sound of weeping, mournful cries that seemed to emanate from the island itself. Forever haunted, despite numerous attempts to cleanse Poveglia of its dark history, the island remained resistant to change. The Italian government put Poveglia up for sale. However, there were no buyers. Perhaps potential buyers were scared off by its chilling stories. The weight of history. Poveglia's story is not unique. History is replete with examples of islands, once idyllic and inviting, transformed into prisons, dumping grounds, and places of unspeakable horror. From Alcatraz to Devil's Island, human cruelty has found fertile ground on isolated shores, far from prying eyes and the scrutiny of conscience. But Poveglia stands apart, its name whispered with a mixture of fear and fascination. Perhaps it's the sheer scale of suffering that unfolded on its shores, the countless souls lost to plague, madness, and despair. Or maybe it's the island's refusal to let go of its past, the whispers of the dead seemingly woven into the very fabric of the place. Whatever the reason, Poveglia serves as a stark reminder of the darker aspects of human nature, our capacity for cruelty, our willingness to abandon those deemed different or inconvenient. It stands as a warning, a testament to the enduring power of the past and the danger of forgetting the lessons etched in blood and bone. But Poveglia's story is also a testament to the human spirit's resilience, our ability to endure even in the face of unimaginable suffering. For even in the darkest corners of the island, amidst the ruins and the whispers, there are glimmers of hope, stories of compassion and whispers of peace. Poveglia's shadow. Today, Poveglia stands silent, shrouded in mist and mystery. The Italian government, recognizing the island's troubled past and the weight of its history, has designated it off-limits, a place best left undisturbed. The buildings, once filled with the cries of the afflicted, now stand empty, their windows like vacant eyes staring out at the lagoon. But Poveglia's story doesn't end with its abandonment. It continues to resonate, carried on the wind that whips across the lagoon, in the whispers of the fishermen who give the island a wide berth, and in the hearts of those drawn to the mysteries of the past. Poveglia challenges us to confront the uncomfortable truths of history, to acknowledge the capacity for darkness that exists within us all. But it also reminds us of the importance of empathy, of our shared humanity, and the need to learn from the mistakes of the past. As the sun sets on Poveglia, casting long shadows across the water, we are left with more questions than answers. But perhaps that is as it should be, for in the end, Poveglia is more than just an island. It is a mirror, reflecting back our own fears, our own capacity for both good and evil, and the enduring power of the past to shape our present. If you enjoyed this video, please support this channel, like, subscribe, and comment. Thank you very much.